What's up, folks? Let's talk Poison Pathfinder, specifically Forbidden Rite Poison Pathfinder. In the past, I've done this build as Molten Strike. In Crucible, I got to do as Freezing Pulse. I've done it as Forbidden Rite before, and I've done it as many different alternatives in different variants of it, but the current variant is probably one of my favorites for this build. It's a build I've never made a video on because the prices of certain pieces of it have just been weirdly fluctuating, and I've never really liked making a video on something that cost 800 divines. This one right now, though, is thankfully, hopefully, even after this video, a very accessible build because of the introduction of charms and because Mahuxotl shield is kind of down in price thanks to everyone, I guess, doing ultimatums or something. I don't really know why it's down, but hey, I'll take it. The first thing I will say off the gate is when you are looking at this build, you have to realize that one of the biggest contentions in this build is the fact that you're always going to be having to press your 1 key or whatever life flask key you have to make the build operate. Now, so for me, that's about every 4.5 seconds or so. I got to press the 1 key just one time. And I know some people really don't like that playstyle, so I'm going to be just upfront with that. If you don't like that, if that does not sound appealing to you, everything else on the build is pretty much automated, and you don't have to do much else at all besides just run around, but you will be pressing the 1 key non-stop. The second thing about the build is it doesn't have a massively good clear in terms of like speed and stuff. If you're really trying to push fast into maps, it is just kind of that C- clear speed that I absolutely love. You can upgrade it pretty well if you end up changing out the large clusters to get those chaos pops, but we'll talk about that a little bit later on. So if you're looking for a little bit more mapping out of it, it is possible to do that. Where this build really shines, though, is when you're doing Ubers and doing content that's really tanky. We're talking like invitations that are like super juiced up. We're talking Uber Shaper with Mavens on it for just the lulls of it. It doesn't matter. This build can pretty much do all that type of content, but it is not by any means immortal. So one of the things you have to watch out for is things like reduced flask charges on maps, things like the Ghost of Thief's Grip, which turns off your flask charge, can be very annoying, and other things that are just gonna maybe one-shot you throughout the thing can happen. So it's not really purely viable for hardcore, but for those of us in softcore looking to have ourselves a good time, it is a very, very good build with a whole lot of defenses and DPS. So let's get into how we make this character. So this is my level 95 Forbidden Rite Pathfinder, and I am so far pretty much done with all the gearing. I've got a couple more awakened gems that I could level up and get going, but other than that, this thing is pretty much as set as it can be, besides maybe some double corruptions as well. So we're going to start off with the main focus on how this system works, which is we are Mahuxotl's Machinations. This is a shield that requires a whole PhD to understand, but we're going to go through the very small highlights that we care about, which is number 1, we get ourselves a Divine Flesh, which means we get a nice chunk of Chaos Resist. We then combo that with Tempered by War, so that we take our cold and lightning damage as fire damage. So now we are 50% fire, 50% chaos. This means that we do not need any other resistances besides fire and chaos, and that's what our gear really does. Only have chaos resist on the pieces that we need them on, and then use a ruby flask with additional resistances to pump up the rest of it, and that's it. That's all the resistances we need. The gear is very, very straightforward and very simple. The ruby flask, along with all my other 4 flasks, are kept up because I am a Pathfinder. I have Nature's Adrenaline spec'd, and then I have spec'd a lot of the flask nodes around the tree, making sure that I have just enough to sustain these 4 flasks permanently at all times, alongside of the life flask. And this is done by using a belt with some flask modifiers on it. So for me, I end up grabbing a flask effect fractured, or depending on how your math works out for the flask you want to run, some type of fracture, and then just doing a little bit of int rolling on it, because the build does need a little bit of int to gain one of the other flask ones, whether that be you got reduced charges, flask charges gained, whatever it is, that's what you're looking for. The flask effect increase on there that I got on mine was just happy accident. I wasn't fishing for it, I wasn't farming for it. So that one just kind of popped up and I kept it. It's decent for the build, but it doesn't make or break it. It's a nice little additive. I'd rather probably have more HP than the flask effect, because I'm not using any kind of flask that really scale up that high. If you were using more unique flasks, let's say you did have Progenesis, let's say you did want to put in a Dying Sun to change out the GMP, things like that nature. That's what you'd be changing out. So that's how we get our flasks to maintain consistently and get ourselves the resistances for both Divine Flesh from our build and the Fire Resist from here. Now, when we press the 1 key, you'll notice that my ES orb does that. That's because my healing is being applied to both my HP and my ES. My ES is getting it from Replica Sorrow of the Divine. When my ES reaches full, my Mahuxotl's Machinations triggers and gives me +5 to all resistances, not just elemental. So 87, 85 is my current resistances, as long as this has hit the top of the bar once in the last 4 seconds, and that's what this buff up over here is. So those are the two main components you really care about on this build. You stack a lot of flask charges. You then use Master Surgeon to make it so your flask is always able to stay online, like mine is over there in the corner. That charges your ES, and then when your ES reaches full, you do get the +5 charges from that. That is the two main components and why we use the shield. There's other things to it, but that's really all you have to understand at this point in time. From there, we're able to make our gear a lot more streamlined and powerful as a result of the fact that we don't need the other two resistances, and then all we need really is life and spell suppression and a little bit of that chaos resist. So for me, what I end up starting with is a Doppelganger's Guise is my main chest piece. I like Doppelgangers for this build for it's just there for that one line of 38% less physical and chaos damage taken while sane. I don't take anything besides physical and chaos, and then the fire, which is then taken care of by the ruby, so it's a very good defensive thing there. The forbidden rites, that when you self-cast them like this, they'll hit you, but that's also chaos damage, so you take less of it, and the regeneration doesn't really kick in because, once again, PhD shield is doing PhD things. Now, one of the things you'll notice is if I turn off the hide mana reservations in life, you'll notice that I am Petrified Blood at full HP. The reason for that is because I am Master Surgeon. My flask is what's topping me off constantly. So this is why I'm going up above this, and the reason that the regeneration, one of the reasons the regeneration doesn't do anything for me is because I'm never below half HP. Thus, I can't really get use of that regeneration. The other option in terms of what you can run for this setup is the 4th vow. If you're going to be wanting to stack a little bit more armor on this and then take your chaos damage against your armor, that is an option. I know some people prefer that. Personally, I've tried both options back and forth, and for me, I really don't like the 4th vow as much as I like Doppelganger's Guise, because I feel like I need like 30-40k armor to really feel the effects of 4th vow being better than Doppelganger's Guise, and getting that amount of armor in this build, while not impossible, it is a little bit of work, and I just don't really want to deal with it. So personally, I just slap on a Doppelganger's. They're fairly cheap usually, and you can go to town pretty easily. Mine happens to have white sockets on it. Don't worry about that. It's easy to color with these colors. The other thing you can do is, of course, because Doppelgangers are fairly cheap as they're concerned, you can also get a +2, +3, +4. Last league I had a +4 very cheaply for like 2 divine. It cost nothing. They fluctuate in price, but it's a very nice chest piece for that. We'll go over links later on. So we already talked about the flask. Belt. Basically, just grab yourself Fracture, slap on some essences with it, get yourself going, and that kind of works the same way as our helmet. For the helmet, there's 2 ways to go about doing this. If you really want to make like the best helmet possible, you kind of have to do semi what I did, which is kind of expensive and not really worth it. There's more flex, and we'll talk about that. But for me, the way I made this was actually I spammed Veiled Orbs on it. My nose is itchy. Veiled Chaos Orbs on it until I landed the Duration, Focus, plus something else. I actually landed Int on this one, which was a surprise to me. That pretty much took care of the rest of my Int requirements on the build. I could get that Int elsewhere, but I landed on the helmet, which worked out very well. And then I just got a life roll by doing a reroll of the prefixes using using the exotic currencies over here for the exotic Chaos Orb, and then just spamming Exalt and stuff on it until I got some type of life roll. The reason you want to do it that way is because you need that spell suppression. You want the duration focus because it's a massive amount of your damage, even though it's been lowered to this lower value, and we'll talk about how to claw some of that back in a sec. And then you want life roll and that fizz taken as fire on both the implicit and the craft. My implicits could definitely be better and stronger. They're right now just kind of lessers because I don't really need the build to be any stronger than it currently is. But that's what you want to do. You want to get the focus, you get the fizz as fire, get the suppress, and get a life roll. If you don't want the intelligence on here, the easier way to do this, if you really don't want to spam a bunch of veiled chaos orbs or look for something like that, is to multi-mod and just remove the intelligence. So multi-mod for the focus and the fizz as fire with a good life roll. But then you probably want like 2 life rolls and then work around that. Try to make the helmet, whatever works for you. This is just the way I happen to roll mine. I was trying to do it as cheaply as possible, and I got a bit lucky with it. Next, the gloves, kind of the same thing once again. I basically bought a suppressed fracture on there and just clicked on it with some chaos resist until I got a life roll, and then I put a focus craft on it. The rest of the mods on there really don't matter. There's a life roll, there's a chaos resist, and a focus mod. That's it. That's all you're looking for on a fractured suppressed glove. You need a little bit of poison on hit because we lost the Divergent Herald of Agony, so you get to claw back a little bit of that, which 5% is plenty. That's all you really need. You just need the lower one. And then Chaos Overtime Multiplier is pretty decent for it. You could keep rolling and trying to get ones that were not just lesser. In my case, I just stuck with the Chaos Damage Over Time Multiplier. Basic one, you would want when in the presence of a unique one, it gives you a lot more damage, and that's really when you care about that damage anyway. But you do already have like I think 15 million uber DPS on a build like this after you ramp up with focuses and all that stuff, so it's plenty of damage. Same thing goes for the boots. Once again, just get some chaos resist, spam until you get life, and I just crafted on movement speed to avoid being chilled. These boots you could definitely make better. You could go for something that is more akin to like avoid elements boots, and then probably stack up some avoid element stuff in there so you can be completely element avoidant if you wanted to do that. Purely doable. I just didn't really bother to because I was being lazy. That's honestly all there is to it when it comes to that. Next, we've got let's talk about the wand. The wand is something that you got to be somewhat careful about. It's very easy to make, but you got to be somewhat careful about. Basically, you're going to grab a cast speed fracture or a damage over time fracture on a wand that is not item level 83. If you want this exact same wand, and also chaos skill effect duration isn't what you want. But don't worry about that. Let's talk about, I got the hiccups. Let's talk about why you don't want it to be item level 83. If you get an item level 83 wand, and you look at the chaos modifiers, you'll see that added chaos damage is one of the modifiers available. You do not want that. You just want +1 all chaos skill gems. So if you get an item level 82, you remove the added chaos damage modifier from the pool, which means that if you just do what I've done here, which is get a fractured suffix, spam until you get +1 all, regal, hope you get another suffix. If you don't, prefix the suffix using Einar. Then you craft on prefixes cannot be changed onto it. So you have 3 suffixes and 1 prefix, and that prefix is +1 all. When you do the harvest for chaos damage, this one, add chaos, remove another one, you're guaranteed to get +1 all chaos gems. So if you do not get an item level 83 plus wand, that's all you can get. If you do prefixes cannot be changed with full suffixes and +1 all skills on the top, you will get +1 chaos skill gems on your prefixes. That's the only possible option. Unless I'm for some reason wrong on that, which correct me if I am. From there, you just got to clean up your suffixes and then slap on can have crafted mods, chaos damage over time, and chaos damage. Chaos skills have increased skill effect duration. Doesn't do anything for poison. That would be more for like soul rends and stuff, but I put that on there because I was testing stuff with soul rend to see if it was functional and working, but this is the one I went with. For me, I went with cast speed because I wanted to run the Wintry Blast, the new Frostblink, to use as my movement skill. And as a result, I went for cast speed here and here. If you want to go for the damage over time fracture, you can also do that. Whichever is cheaper works just fine. The cast speed fracture for me was cheaper, and they do almost the exact same amount of damage. The only difference is you're punching yourself with Forbidden Rite a little bit more often in the face. So take that with, you know, the grain of salt that you want to take it as. Of course, we got the shield, the Mahuxotl's Machinations. Already talked about that. And then same thing for the Amulet. You want to make sure that you just get yourself either fractured cast speed or fractured damage over time. I went for fractured cast speed, as I've been doing so far. Roll +1 skills. Make sure you got your suffixes filled. +1, do the Harvest Reforge, get a +1 all chaos, and then craft whatever you want on it. I can still multi-mod this, I just haven't. Let's also address the fact that there is the thing called Replica Dragonfang in the game. Replica Dragonfang for what Forbidden Rite right now is super cheap. So if you want to go that route, by all means go that route. I don't think this is worth it if Replica Dragonfang is under 3-2 Divine, somewhere in that range. It's just a little bit of DPS loss, but at the end of the day, this is way more expensive to make, and it's probably not worth it in the long run. So I would go with the Replica Dragonfang as long as it's cheap, and then just anoint yourself Whispers of Doom so that we can double curse, which is really nice when you're a poison build. My 2 rings are literally made the same way, which is cast speed, hit it with an essence, get a life roll, and you're done. You do not need that minus mana cost, you do not need any of that stuff. I think you do maybe need the strength roll on one of them or something, and you can get an int roll on the other one. This is where you know, flexibility of the gear. Get rolls where you can. You put it on the amulet if you wanted to. If you got a strength and int roll on there, you could do that as well. Basically, both of them are just for extra cast speeds with damage over time. And with all that cast speed, I'm able to actually warp around pretty nicely with Wintry Blast, which is why I went this. It's a very nice movement skill when you have, you know, cast speeds in the 5-6 range, and it feels really good to use. So that's why I went cast speed. It's better setup for me, and I enjoy it as a result. But if you want to do damage over time, fractures on both the wands and the amulets, you're more than welcome to, or just get Replica Dragonfang and then don't worry about it. I think Wintry Blast will still feel pretty good for moving around in general. Let's talk about links. What are we doing? What are we connecting? Why do we have it? Well, of course, Forbidden Rite, our main skill of damage. It's very nice to just spam. You get a little bit of the outwards projectiles from whenever there's mobs around you, and good stuff. It does damage. That's, you know, that's the main focus of the build. From there, we get GMP, greater multiple projectiles. The reason we only use greater multiple projectiles and not like plus Dying Sun or something is, if I remember correctly, there's been videos kind of showcasing that Forbidden Rite only hits about 5 in the main center, and you don't really want too many projectiles outside of that. It's one of the reasons in pub, instead of saying all primary projectiles for my DPS checks and stuff, I do set it to 1 projectile and then make the skill do 5, because that's more accurate to the actual amount of overlaps that you're going to be getting from Forbidden Rite. So you don't want to have too many projectiles because it spreads them out. You don't want to use volley because that puts them in a line. Just use GMP linked with that and you're good to go. From there, Awaken Void Manip, Awaken Deadly Ailments, Awaken Unbound. Those are the general ones for poison damage. You're just going to slap them in there and just let them do their thing. Mine needs to still be, this one needs to be quality, these need to be leveled up. As you can tell, I don't really need them to be that much stronger. Build's doing just fine, killing insane uber content, not a problem. Spell Echo is just how we get that cast speed to stack more of those beautiful, beautiful poisons as fast as possible and get as many hits as possible, because we do get benefits from having a lot of hits, and we'll go over that in a little bit. From there, Frostbrink of a Wintry Blast with faster casting on it. That's how I'm able to just, you know, zip around like this. Very nice. If you want to use something that has a little bit more range, a little bit more spacing, flame dashes, whatever you want to use. You could even shield charge if you're so apt to do so, if you change out some things to move around like that. I just don't like shield charge, so I don't use it. Links wise, Petrified Blood is one of the things that we're going to have reserving the massive mana pool of nothing back there to give ourselves that full mana gorb of healing. And then when we're down below 50 HP, 50% HP, Petrified Blood of course kicks in, so that if we just hold this button down here, my life flask kicks out, we'll go down, and well, Okay, it's not going to let me go down below 50%. And we don't heal above 50%, but we do get that benefit of taking damage over time when it goes below 50%. And as we have a giant life flask healing us for 4,000 to 5,000 a second, then Petrified Blood is a very good one there. In terms of the other one, Purity of Fire, of course, is very important for giving yourself that maximum fire resist. Overall, when you have the +1 all skills here and +1 all skills here, you get a Purity Fire that is level 23, so it goes up to that next breakpoint pretty easily. That's how we have the 87 that we currently have, which is very nice. For me, I like using Immortal Call increased duration as my skill of choice for defenses. One of the reasons is we do run a couple ways to gain endurance charges, so it's just a nice button to press when you're going to take a Shaper Slam or going to take some Exarch attacks or anything like that. You got yourself that button to press, and it feels very good. There is one other defensive button I don't currently have, which I should, which is Arctic Armor. Val Arctic Armor is very strong in terms of the, oh my god, I need an oh shit button right now, which basically means you can tank memory games, you can tank anything. I just don't have it yet. It's my other thing that I need to pick up for this build, just for the memes and more defensive things, but haven't worried about it. This is good enough. Arctic Armor is great for the build because you are, for the most part, standing still when you're just ramping up, having to go at something. And you're going to get that less damage taken for both physical and fire, and since fire is the only elemental damage we take, it's very, very strong when combined with things like the Ruby Flask. Herald of Agony, we need that poison chance, and of course 10% more damage with poisons is always good, so just clawing that back in. Somehow you could almost drop Herald of Agony if you really changed out the clusters to make it fit you better, but I really haven't thought about wanting to do that yet. I just had the Agony Crawler walking around doing its thing. Arrogance Vitality, just a level 1 is all we need, because we just have it right there at the edge, taken off for the fact that we need it for the Watcher's Eye, which, wow, where did I put my Watcher's Eye? There it is. You want the increased life recovery effect while affected by Vitality from Flasks. This is the big one. I will say that this thing's price seems to be spiking up and down pretty weirdly. I would drop the Purity of Fire off of it if it was between the two choices and get yourself a like 60-70 life flask recovery by Vitality rather than the 6 physical damage reduction combo if it's very expensive, because it is the main brunt of your defenses come from the life flask being able to heal you as fast as it is, so getting that combo in there probably more important than the physical as fire for that. I paid 45C for my Watcher's Eye. Like I said, prices of stuff is very weird and it moves around very rapidly, so I saw a couple days ago those things were going for like 8 divines. Don't ask me why that is, I have no idea. Then we do a cast on damage taken, Frost Bomb. There's a lot of things on this league that heal for a lot for some reason, so I use a Frost Bomb in there just to stop the healing and make it easier for myself. Then Temp Chains and Despair. Look, that guy got voided. Good for him. Temp Chains and Despair are the two curses we run, both very good for poison builds. Despair, of course, minus chaos resistances. Temp Chains makes things take longer. Beautiful little set of combinations, also giving us a little bit of defense from slowing down the enemies with temporal change. And then we have a Malevolence with Inspiration, Duration, and Divine Blessing. The weird thing about Malevolence being on a blessing is that you do have to get used to pressing it. When you press it, you'll see that mine blinks like this, and you would think, okay, I won't be able to trigger it because I'm not going to be able to time it with when it's, going. But what you do is you literally just hold the button down, and when you have the mana to cast it, it will automatically cast it for you. So when you're thinking you're going to put your blessing on, you press 1, you hold the button down, and it will just trigger, and then you're good to go. You don't have to really do much else to it to make sure it's on. It will trigger itself the moment your ES goes up high enough, which is right there or something like that from mine. And we do run the Life Mastery for 30%. Where is it? Where is the... Wait, do I not run it anymore? No, I don't run it anymore. I thought I ran it. Skill cost, Life Mastery. I guess I have taken it out. Yeah, okay. If you don't have enough mana, if you need a little bit more, and you need your skills to push the other way a bit more, and for some reason you don't have enough ES or something, then you could run that. The life cost, 30% of mana is life, to make that work as well. Now, let's talk about where you get a little bit more of your damage from and kind of how it works with the charms. Big thing is, of course, we get Wither from Nature's Reprisal, and we hit a lot really rapidly, like 7 casts a second, 5 of those hit. Basically, Wither stack is instantaneous, and then we get the fact that we're always on a Flask effect from Master Toxins. Where it comes to being very handy is where we get, or what we get from the charms. 6% spell suppression and gain frenzy on hit. This gives me a little bit more spell suppression, so I don't have to buy the high-end 14 fractures for spell suppress. Very nice, makes the build a whole lot cheaper. And the 6% chance to gain frenzy on hit is everything you need to generate frenzy charges because of how rapidly and how many times you hit, no matter whether it be bossing or mapping. This means we do not have to buy Way of the Poacher. The Way of the Poacher is like very expensive, and that was usually the way to go and get that +1 max frenzy and also the frenzy charge generation, but we don't actually need Way of the Poacher, which makes this a lot cheaper to get and a lot easier for us to build the build. Highly recommend not going for Way of the Poacher. Second thing we get is we get the Juggernaut's Charm of the Chieftain. So that is the charm I have up here. This means I get an endurance charge when you are hit. It does not specify enemy hit, it says when you are hit, meaning that we have actually really good uptime on the endurance charges just from that, and we don't really have to worry about it because we're hitting ourselves with Forbidden Rite. Now, I do combo that with the Megalomaniac of Enduring Composure as well. So if you've been hit recently, you gain 1 charge a second, and if you have a 27% chance to gain a charge when you're hit, you basically top off your endurance charges right away, even after you've used Immortal Call, which means you have a very long-lasting Immortal Call all the time, and then you also get your endurance charge to pop off to give you a little bit more of that physical damage reduction, which feels pretty good. That's a very good combo, along with the +2 max fire resist to just give yourself more defenses in general. It gets very cheaply too. At least it was when I bought it. And then the last thing we do is we get phasing on kill, which is just nice for mapping if you're doing ultimatums or abysses or anything like that, where you have to like run through stuff. Phasing on kill, pretty much always going on. And then the big one here is the 3% increased duration for poisons you inflicted recently up to a maximum of 100. This basically claws back the old helmet modifier for focus to be a permanent thing because of how often we poison enemies, because of how often we put poison, you know, even in single target. If it's 5 times 30, if it's 5 times 7, you know, 35 or so per second or whatever, how math works. Don't worry about it. You'll end up basically hitting this every single time. You'll always be recently applying enough to do 100, and that's really what matters at the end of the day. So you're good to go. I love this, and it was also a very cheap pickup. Definitely put it in your build to give yourself a big boost of that poison ramp for fairly cheap. In terms of other things you can modify in the build, I like to run Unwavering Evil, Wicked Pal, and Unholy Grace. This is just my combo for the cheaper of the Chaos clusters. They're never super cheap, but this is one of the cheaper ones. And then the change out you can do, because I run 2 of these, is if you want to switch out Unholy Grace, you can switch out Unholy Grace for Unspeakable Gifts, which means that things will explode, chaos pops come from that, and that's going to make your mapping a whole lot better. Your DPS will go down a little bit, but your mapping will go up substantially if you want to do it that way. I've never really done it because it's just more expensive to do it this way, and I don't mind the C- clear speed, but if you want to do it, if you want to get that in there, by all means, get Unspeakable Gifts in there. The build's going to really pop off quite literally at that point, if you end up doing that. As for what we do to claw back that spell poison that we lost, then that's going to be our mediums. I'm running 2 septic spells. This gives us 40% combined to poison, chance to poison with spell damage, and that claws back what was the Herald of Agony Crawler Divergent version. This is now how we do it. It's very simple. These cost absolutely nothing to get. Combined with Brood for potency, which is really good. We got life flask recovery, we got damage over time, and we got that flask charges gained. One of the things that I will preface by saying is if you're going to look at your flask charges gained, never go with the thing that you have crit recently, or that you have this one here, or clicking Alchemist Genius or anything like that. If you're looking in pub and you're looking at your flask here, you'll notice that it's all of mine say flask uptime 100%. If I remove this heavy belt, it will say average uptime 97, minimum 83. That means if you haven't crit or haven't done something, you know, to generate more charges, you will drop your flask off. So here, if we put on crit, average uptime 100, minimum 93. I always personally like to make sure that the minimum says 100 by just finagling my gear. So that's why one of the things you got to be careful of when you do nodes like this is flask charges gained if you've crit recently. You probably will have crit recently, so for some flask it's okay. Personally though, I don't like doing it. I like making sure that all my flasks are always on at all the time. And as far as the last piece of the puzzle goes, the Lethal Pride, this one you're just going to be looking for something in this area that has some good stuff for you. For me, I do 2 Fizz's Fire, where are they? Here, yeah, here. Physical damage taken from hits as fire damage, physical damage taken from hits as fire damage, and a little bit of percent life. Basically, just any combination of life, physical as fire, and if there is anything else good you can find on Lethal Pride with these 4 nodes, that's going to be what you're looking for. This is the one I found. It cost about a divine, as they usually do. If someone knows that it's a good one, they'll upprice it, or if you know someone gets spammed when they list one, they'll go up in price. But you can usually find a decent combination of life and Fizz's Fire or something in this area with Tempered by War. So make sure it is Rakiatas if you're going to be picking one of those up. From there, just get yourself normal rare jewels with poison life, stuff like that. You don't need the hinder one. I chose it because I wasn't doing the, somewhere it says this one remove hinder when you use a flask charge. I was trying to make sure that this build could do ultimatums as cleanly as possible, and that was one of the reasons I have the avoid chill. I tried to do a hinder one for the jewel and all that stuff. Just figure out how it is that you want to build those rare pieces. And the other thing is down here, this Megalomaniac for Enduring Composure. I don't really know if it's necessary. You could probably claw back a lot if you just take this out, but I put Touch of Cruelty on this one because I found one that was on sale for very cheap, and I figured, screw it, if they're hindered, they take increased chaos damage. That's not bad, and also kind of slows everything down around me for a more defensive build as well. Other than that though, it's pretty straightforward. This is an Amethyst Flask with a skin on it with reduced curse effect. That way we just don't have any curses. As long as it's a tier 1, you don't have curse things. Additional resistances, cast speed on the Silver Flask. Mine's like a tier 3 cast speed roll. I could get it even better. That one requires reduced charges to stay up 100% uptime. And then the Replica Sword of the Divine is just always going to be up, giving us that Eldritch Battery. I don't really think there's anything else about the build that I can describe or explain anymore, but if there is, by all means, leave the questions in the comments below. I absolutely love this build. It's my go-to build for just having a nice, safe Uber saver. If I'm gonna test a Uber on another character, I have this guy in the back pocket, knowing that if I leave him a portal, I can run in with this guy, clean up the fight, get my loot, and then try again with another build. Not a problem. I absolutely love it, but I know that the pressing the 1 key thing is gonna be very annoying for some people, so I fully understand if you don't want to play it, but then by all means don't worry about it. But defenses are through the roof. We got a nice 12 million DPS on Ubers, and that's without a +2 Doppelgangers, guys. If we got a +2 Doppelgangers, guys, that goes up quite a lot as well, which these cost like a divine, which is not bad. That gives us another, what, 2 mil? Yeah, so about 15 mil Uber DPS. If everything overlaps, if you're focused, you know, it does fluctuate from the focus as well. So if we take focus off, we go back down to 12 mil. But you get the idea. It's really good. It's really nice. Works quite well as a build. And I have had a generally enjoyable time making it as my league starter and evolving it into the state that it is. Because the gear is in itself very easy to craft. It's very straightforward, and there's not really a lot of things you have to do or think about that can go wrong, other than, you know, the item level on the wand, and then just click on some essences. It's good to go. Hopefully you enjoyed that video guide on the Forbidden Rite Poison Pathfinder. I wish it was still Freezing Pulse and Tinctures worked with it, but since they don't, oh well, we went Forbidden Rite to clean up that one as we do. Anyway, that's going to be it for this video. More to come. More videos, more guides. I've got some good memes in the works. So we're going to start working on those next. Peace.